Hello, Internet. Welcome to episode 337 of the Assorted Calibers podcast. The second little podcast is a little bit for everyone. I'm Weer'd, and with me tonight, she's amazing. She is wonderful. She is a radiant star, Erin Paulette. How you doing, Erin?
Well, this radiant star has flooded swales.
Erin?
Yes, Weer'd.
What's a swale?
It's part of my front yard.
Which part of your front yard?
Okay, this is going to get technical. So, I live in a place where we do not have sidewalks. And so, instead of having, like, a drain system for rainwater, what we have is we have little ditches called swales. And we've got, like a culvert, a pipe that's built into our driveway so that it can drain from either side.
Mm-hmm.
And when the rainwater comes in, it accumulates in the swales and then hopefully travels down into one of the many retaining ponds that are in the area. So that's what a swale is.
And so what's wrong with yours?
It's flooded because the water main is broken, and I don't know how long it's been pumping out water. We only noticed it when, actually, we don't even know who the guy is. He just must live in the neighborhood. He was walking his dog. He came up and knocked at our door at 7, and said, "Hey, I don't know if you know this, but you're leaking water." And we went out, and the swale was flooded so much that it was almost level with the road.
Ooh.
And it had gone into our neighbor's yard, well, into their swale, and then down to that other neighbor's. And then I looked to my right, sort of uphill, and that one had been flooded too. And I'm going, I don't know how long that's been running, but that's a lot of water. And all I'm hearing is cash register noises, and so I call the emergency utility line for the city, because they're the ones who handle our water, and I report it, and the guy came out within about 30 minutes, which is really good for after hours, and he said, "Hey, I'm here to fix this. Wow, the water's really coming, so I'm going to have to turn off all of the water for 30 minutes to an hour, and then I'm going to have to..." he said he was going to do something to prevent water from getting in the pipes. I don't know. But it was basically, you're going to lose water pressure until I get it fixed, but I'll knock on the door and let you know that it's done. And I go, okay, great. I have some questions. And I said, okay, so I don't know how long this has been running or how much this is going to cost us. Because what I'm thinking is we get some sort of a repair ticket from him that we can then use when we go to pay the water bill. And basically it's like, no, you don't charge us for this. And he said some of the most beautiful words I have ever heard. And he said, "Oh, don't worry about it. The leak is on the city side.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't even go onto your meter. The city's going to eat all of this." I just went, oh.
Oh, yeah. As soon as I heard you, I'm like, that sounds like a downstream of the meter problem, which is also called not your problem.
Yes. So that was some good news. But that was a lot of water. Just for reference, because Florida deals with a lot of water, we're sort of optimized for that in terms of hurricane season. In order for the water to fill up the swales such that it is reaching or cresting the road, we're talking tropical storm or worse.
Mm-hmm.
So this was a lot of water coming out.
Yeah, there was a main broke down the street. So there was just just like a naturally occurring or an unnaturally occurring spring popping out of the street, which the street was just bubbling. And that was going for a while, and that was it was a substantial amount of water.
Yeah, something similar was going on here because I went to go look, and the water just seemed to be bubbling up from underground. It wasn't like there was a physical break in something where I can go, yep, that's broken. Mm-hmm. It's just, it's pushing water up out of the hole, and it's going pretty fast. Wow.
A few years ago, there was a major main that broke that was servicing like several of the largest counties in Massachusetts, and the images of that was, it was a literal geyser.
So when people go, I think it's clam digging or whatever, and you look for the little sort of blowholes. Mm-hmm. It looked like that, only bigger and faster.
Oh yeah.
So that's what's going on with me. How are you doing, Weer'd? Or are you not done talking about whatever you were talking about?
No. I could give you a tight 20 minutes on clam digging, but nobody wants to hear that.
Save it for the blooper reel.
But you do that for both for clams and if you're going for marine worms, which make excellent fishing bait. I finally got to check a grail gun off my list.
Which one is that? I'm
trying to remember if we talked about it on the show, but we have a little ACP birthday and gift list, so that we can all be reminded on whose birthdays is what, and you can put stuff like your Amazon wish list and stuff like that. But also, you created this, Aaron, so thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And one of the lists on it, since we are all gun nuts, is what calibers do you shoot? Mm-hmm. And I specifically wrote any caliber. If you buy ammo for a gun that I don't have, I'll buy a gun for it. Because I love hipster calibers, and so it's a challenge. And so Miles, being the lovely person that he is, aka lovable scamp, bought me a box of 9 by 21 IMI, which nobody should have heard from, unless you might be an absolute gun nut if you totally get what I'm talking about.
So that's not 9mm Largo, right? Because
it is not. It's the same. It's the same European designation.
Largo is 9 by 20.
Nope, it's not. It's also 9 by 21. It is. There's several 9 by 21 cartridges.
It's 9 by 21, but it's different somehow.
Yes, this is 9 by 21 IMI, and so it is essentially a 9mm Largo case. It very well may be. I'm not 100% sure about the dimensional differences. David's getting angry right now hearing me say this, but it's essentially that same kind of 9 by 21 case. But the bullet is loaded down very, very deep into the case. So therefore the overall length is the same as 9mm Luger, aka your standard 9x19 pistol cartridge that that you feed into your Glock 19s. And it is designed for countries, and the ballistics are identical to 9mm. Why does it exist? It exists for countries that where it is illegal to own military caliber cartridge guns. So when I was buying the gun that I'm about to talk about, I did ask the person, so do you have a Beretta 98 back there? And even the guys at the gun shop had no idea what I was talking about. Just what you see in the case, bud. But the other box that of ammo that was in the package that Miles gave me was something that I was actually very, very pleased to see, which was a box of 454 Casull. And I have a love affair with that cartridge, and have been wanting a gun in that for a long time. And I was actually walking into the gun shop to inquire about a different gun, and I saw a Ruger Super Red Hawk Alaskan, which is the snub-nosed 454 Casull Ruger. And I went, well, I know what I'm walking out with. Let me go walk.
Why would you ever snub-nose that particular pistol and that particular caliber?
Well, it's called the Alaskan because it was specifically designed for hikers, backpackers, and fishermen who are not out hunting big game in Alaska, Montana areas with grizzly bears, but the area still has grizzly bears, and grizzly bears still like to eat people. And so you can have a somewhat handy gun that is also capable of dropping a very, very large minivan with fangs.
Yes, I understand. I just don't understand why you would snub-nose that instead of having a full-length barrel.
The idea so that it's compact, it's a little bit lighter, it's a little bit handier.
But the recoil.
Oh, but the recoil. It's delightful. I went shooting on Saturday. We are talking on Monday. My hand is mostly better. At no point do I have I brought a box of 20 with me to the to the gun club, and I'm like, I'm going to shoot this whole box, and then I'm going to see how I feel in the morning. Take 20 of these and call me in the morning. And I've decided that 20 rounds of 454 Casull is essentially the soft limit of a day shooting with that gun, because my hand is sore, but my hand has been functional the whole time. I did one day shoot 15 rounds of 500 Smith & Wesson Magnum, 10 of which were Bubba's Pissin' Hot reloads. My friend called them the 12-gauge duplication load because it was a 1-ounce wad cutter going at 1,500 feet per second out of a 4-inch barrel.
Ow.
And he had chronographed it. So that was not that's what it said in the book. No. He wrote the book on this one. That was a delightful round. But I had the joy of waking up the next morning with the claw. Just a twisted, gnarled right hand is one of those. All right, what am I supposed to do with this now? I actually remember eating a bowl of cereal and just being like, oh, all right, we'll eat a bowl of cereal with my left hand. So I can indeed operate a fork and knife, but it is a little bit sore. So 10 is, or 12 because it's a 6-shot, 12 is probably a pretty is a reasonable amount to shoot, but you could do 20 if you want to prove something. But it is delightful, and I love it because I have been wanting a ridiculous revolver for a long time, and now I have one that is very ridiculous.
Okay.
Aaron is like, why would you do that to yourself?
Pretty much.
Because some of us are not things called recoil whores.
There are easier and far cheaper ways to hurt yourself.
Yes, but there is not as spectacular. I mean, the fact of the matter is that I could shoot the target, instantly see where my round had marked because it's a 45 caliber hole and a very, very clean one because I was shooting flat nose bullets. So it was essentially doing that wad cutter hole punch, but giant. And then I would just see this huge cascade of sand as I just excavated the berm. And it was loud.
I imagine it was.
I was shooting outside and it was a very sunny day, so I didn't really notice it was tossing and it wasn't particularly humid, so I wasn't noticing it was tossing a really big fireball, but I'm sure that will come. All right, well, shall we get on to the news stories? I
mean, good luck.
In what way?
Just shifting gears like that.
I mean, it's like shooting a 454 revolver. Just hang on to something. So, Aaron, I put this one first really, really in your honor, and I really wanted to get your impression of it.
Uh-huh.
So it says here, DeSantis wants legislature to reevaluate gun safety laws passed after Parkland.
Okay, that's good.
And are you not holding your breath? Is that the bad part?
I really wouldn't even call it the bad part. It's just the realistic part. Because as I've mentioned time and time again, anytime you want to pass a gun law in Florida, not only do you have to pass the Democrat opposition, you also have to pass the opposition of South Florida, aka Miami Republicans. and that's really difficult. And so, as most people remember, back in 2018, we had the Parkland shooting by a 19-year-old. Now, at this point, I don't remember whether or not he bought the gun or whether he just acquired it. I may be conflating that with another killer who stole a gun.
I remember specifically, he did buy the gun. He did pass the background check. He had also been arrested for domestic violence, I believe 24 times, if I'm correct. It was a lot. And, and at no point did anybody press charges with it. So there was none of that. And also, just because it makes me angry, he also turned himself into the FBI and told them he was going to shoot up a school. And they said, that's nice. Have fun.
Yeah. Total law enforcement failure. But anyway, because he bought a gun and the state was freaked out about the murders, well, they decided they needed to do something. And this was something, therefore they must do it. And they raised the legal age to purchase long guns from 18 to 21. And they instituted the state's red flag law and maybe some other things. I don't know. Those were the two big ones. Mm-hmm. And I have mixed feelings about DeSantis, but this is something that I agree with. I just don't think it's going to happen anytime soon. He also talked about he wants us to go full constitutional carry, which would be nice. I don't see that happening anytime soon. Please, prove me wrong, Florida. I'd love to be proven wrong, but I don't think I will be.
I will just say, sitting here in Massachusetts, I will say, must be nice to have, even if it's empty promises, to have legislators promising you relaxing of gun reforms rather than saying, oh, just you wait, we're going to do it to you even harder.
Yeah, that much is nice. I unless there's something else to talk about, I think this really slides into the next topic.
Yeah.
Which is the 11th Circuit is upholding Florida's under 21 sales ban. And there's really not a lot of meat to that. It says what it is right on the tin. But this is a hobby horse of mine, and I'm going to climb on, rant a bit, and then let Weer'd have his say. But as Stephen Gutowski said in his article, as other people have said, as I have said in the past, I'm really sick of this kind of adult, but not really, that happens at age 18. Where you're old enough to influence the course of the country, get into credit card debt, sign contracts, and, sign up for the military where you can die horribly on foreign soil. But you're not adult enough to drink, and in this case, purchase a long gun. And I think it's ridiculous. And I think that we should have nationwide an all or nothing. Look, you're either fully adult at age 18 with all the rights and responsibilities that entails, or we say that teenagers are not fully adults, they need to mature, and we should raise the age of legal adulthood to 21 or 25. The thing is, I don't believe that's going to happen because that's going to cut into the military's recruitment. And so they're going to pitch a fit. So that just leaves 18 being legal adult for everything, which I would love. But I'm not going to be holding my breath for that either. It's just one of the things I rail against because there's really nothing I can do about it. It's hypocrisy and I hate it. What do you think, Weer'd?
I mean, I 100% agree with you on that. I mean, it's the so and FYI, I'll also like to add, since we have aged out past that whatsoever. I was smoking at 18, but now it has gone up to 21. That being said, actually, I think I smoked my first cigar at 17, and and all that. And I knew many people who were, 14 and 15 years old who at least would occasionally smoke a cigarette that they had acquired, either stolen from their parents or various things. And I was just like, I'm a bit of a weirdo, and the fact that I'm a gun nut and I don't own an AR-15. I am also currently sipping a rye right now, but I really didn't drink until I was 21. I had a couple of sips here and there, but I did not actually drink until I was 21, because by the time I was actually starting to get interested in alcohol, it was pretty close. So I just said, you know what, let's see if I can do it, and I more or less did. But I mean, I think many of us either were drinking in high school or knew people who were drinking in high school. So it's not an uncommon thing. And so it really is just dumb that you're allowed to vote. You're allowed to get into debt. You could get married, without parental consent, and all of this stuff that can absolutely just upend your life and change the course of your life forever. But yet, no, can't smoke a cigarette, can't drink a beer,
can't rent a car.
Yeah, can't rent a car. That's not a law, but that's just a overall policy. There are some companies that will rent to people who are under, I don't know if it's 21 or 25 or whatever.
It's 25.
Yeah. And all of that. So yeah, it's just stupid. And then furthermore, like, as a general rule, like, the people, at the time of the founding, like the American Revolution was fought with, people as young as 16 years old, as far as like rifle carriers. And then there were drummer boys and flag bearers who were even younger than that. So it's,
well, and that doesn't even take into account all of the young Appalachian men, and I presume women, who would have a 22 for hunting food for the family.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, maybe they get around that by technically the family buys it for them, but still, we have decades, if not a century, probably that or more, of responsible minors owning firearms that are used in hunting.
Oh yeah.
And so to say that an otherwise legal adult cannot purchase a long gun, you combine that with the federal, you can't purchase a handgun until you're 21. It's just, and the reason it bothers me so much, well, first of all, the hypocrisy, but also you have so many young queer people who are living in homes where they are not supported or even abused, and the moment they become an adult, maybe they're thrown out by their parents or they just want to get away, and so they're vulnerable people without a means to defend themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And I absolutely hate that. So if there is any way, I mean, I'm going to contact Costas Morris and see if there's anything we can do, because maybe this will be appealed. I don't know. I don't remember seeing that in the article, but yeah, I want to fight this so much.
I would be shocked, because this is very much judicial Calvin ball, because there is just no evidence that people under the age of 21, and the case of at the time of the founding, people under the age of 18 were owning and carrying firearms. I mean, it's,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you said it great in the, in rural Maine. I knew so many, I grew up in the Portland area, so there wasn't really a lot of farmland out there. But boy, when I was at UMaine, half the dudes I knew were farm boys, and my father-in-law actually grew up on a dairy farm, and they all talked about, like, yeah, no, their folks, absolutely gave them guns, because they're like, yeah, if you want to go out to the back 40 and shoot woodchucks and squirrels and things like that are pests and cause problems around the farm, I will do whatever I can to encourage that habit. And so, like, yeah, my father-in-law spent much of his childhood bumming around the cow pastures, shooting woodchucks that would dig holes and cows could step in and break their ankles. And so, killing woodchucks was something that was highly encouraged. And so, yeah, just, 14-year-old boy just grabbing a gun. No, don't need to ask permission. Just go and shoot. And so, yeah, this is ridiculous. It makes no sense. Again, at the time of the founders, kids as young as 16 were expected to show up at muster with their own gun. They weren't given a gun by, it wasn't even like the military where we take 17 and 18-year-old men and give them a rifle and have them stand a post. No, this was like literally no, show up with your gun and your ammo and we'll drill and or shoot redcoats. That was how things were done back then. And so the idea that the founders were like, yeah, no, you need to be at least 21, which is practically a senior citizen. Like, this is Calvin Ball. This makes no sense. If this doesn't get appealed, it's foolishness.
Well, I mean, the good news about this is that the Florida Attorney General disagrees with the 11th Circuit's ruling and says he's not going to defend it if the Supreme Court takes the case. So that's a good sign. That is a good sign.
So yeah, that's wonderful. So hopefully that will happen because that affects everyone. Like it's one thing for the, I'm looking at assault weapons ban cases and handgun roster cases that will absolutely affect me here in Massachusetts, but pretty much everybody else at the sound of my voice, it isn't going to affect because so many of us, just the vast majority of America, you buy whatever guns you want and you could get as many magazines as you want. We just do that. Yeah, that's not what it's like here. And the courts are usually often favorable towards laws that are only narrow. Again, we had Heller versus DC, very, very affected very, very few places in the United States. And then we had NYSERPA affected a little bit more than Heller v. DC, but affected, just a handful of states. So though this would affect all of them, which is interesting. So it might be bad juju because the court is sometimes iffy about driving culture, no matter how right it may be, but time will tell.
I really want to say something pithy, but I can't think of anything right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, time will tell. Unfortunately, it may not tell us the time that we want.
Mm-hmm. Well, it could be worse. We could be in Australia. I always put these news stories in whenever I find them, just because I want. Again, I got no say in Australia. I got no pull over there. I'm an American. They're Australian. I don't like when Australians talk about us owning guns. And so therefore, me talking about their stuff, they should have just as much disinterest in my opinion as I have in theirs. That being said, this is not a different mentality than what we have here. The politicians that are pushing this are the same as the politicians here, and I am talking about knife bans. And so
actually, it's not even a knife ban. It's called a machete ban, but according to the article, they define a machete as a cutting-edge knife with a blade of more than 20 centimeters. Converting that to land on the moon units, that is 7.87 inches. And I don't know what you would call that, but to me, that's not a machete. That's like a hunting knife, an outdoor knife.
Well, the one that I was going to get at too, which is also the FUD lore sort of angle on that, is I own several knives that are longer than 8 inches, and many of them are in my kitchen. They're my carving knives. I've got several great big knives that I use to cut watermelons and carve roasts and things like that. And and they're not assault weapons. Those are just standard kitchen knives. I mean, I do.
Now, the article does specifically say that in the next sentence, how the government is going to consult with industry on the definition, because kitchen knives are not intended to be included. But you know how government works.
It's going to be very, very similar to, because I just mentioned the assault weapons ban. We had the assault weapons ban where they had the evil feature list. And the evil feature list was dumb, and it's even dumber when you look at the California featureless rifles that have all these weird stocks, weird grips,
Yeah, the flipper grip.
Exactly. Yeah. And all that stuff. And all of it is designed to comply with the evil features list. But in the end, the evil features are dumb. And, the evil features list included a grenade launcher, of which, when I was a teenage boy hearing about that, I'm like, oh man, I was thinking about Arnold Schwarzenegger in Predator, where he had the M16 with the M203 underslung grenade launcher. I'm like, yeah, people shouldn't have one of those, and realize, no, we're talking about like a Yugoslavian SKS with the grenade spigot. So that's what they're talking about there. And
okay, so for our listeners who may not know what the grenade spigot is, back before we had proper grenade launchers like Vietnam era, what we would do is there would be grenades that would launch off of your rifle, and you would shoot like a particular charge, and that would shoot the grenade-like missile in a ballistic arc from your rifle. And there needs to be like adapters, and I think most of them have like a gas system, because the gas for launching the grenade is separate. It's much weaker than for firing a bullet. It was needlessly complicated, which is why we don't use it anymore.
Yeah, the short answer is, you would have a little attachment at the end of of the muzzle that would have a couple of little gas rings on it. You would have essentially something that looked like a lawn dart, or something like that. It was essentially essentially a mortar charge that you would stick over on that, and then you would load a blank into the gun. This was in the era where most of the infantry guns were bolt action, so that wasn't a problem. But guns like the FAL have a little setting on the gas port where you could tune it to grenade launcher, which would essentially blocks the gas system, so all the gas is going out the muzzle and therefore pushing that grenade. And essentially you're creating a poor man's mortar. And this was an evil feature, and if you had that plus a protruding pistol grip, or actually in many cases those were threaded onto the barrel, so I think that the grenade launcher alone, like a Yugo SKS, well, it didn't have a removable magazine. Either way, it was dumb.
Well, also, don't forget that bayonet mounts were also an evil feature.
Yep. Because as they always said in the 90s, because drive-by bayoneting is a huge problem. But the whole purpose of this stupid piecemeal was because they wanted to ban AR-15s and AK-47s and the like, but not, Uncle Booger's semi-auto hunting rifle. And so, many of which were semi-auto and had removable magazines and all of that stuff, but were just basic, basic hunting guns. Not that there's much of a functional difference between the two, but they wanted to make it so that the hunters would vote against this and vote against it. They did. So that's where they came up with all the military features that we're going through, and why there was so much turmoil with the fact that gun companies would pin on a muzzle brake and grind off a bayonet lug and go, there we go, we have a ban compliant gun. And they're, no, not like that. And so, and of course, we got the arms race with California that's going on, and California keeps getting more angry and more angry the more people comply with the regulations, and so
yeah, because they call it a loophole, whereas it's following the regulations.
Yeah, you told us not what to do. It's like saying, I'm driving down the highway at the posted speed limit and go, no, you're breaking the rules. Why? I'm complying with the law. Yeah, but you're not supposed to comply with the law. You're supposed to drive 10 miles an hour. Well, then make the speed limit 10. Well, no one will vote for that. And so, yeah. But either way, I'm interested in seeing how the hell they're going to classify my, 11-inch carving knife as not a machete, while a machete, which, by the way, isn't even a weapon. It's a gardening implement. It just happens to be that they are cheap and plentiful, so people use them as weapons, and they gain the stigma of weapons with certain groups. But there's nothing. A machete is 110% a gardening / utility blade, and that's all it's designed for.
Well, again, that's also mentioned in the article, because if people wish to get a machete for purposes such as agriculture or hunting, they will need to apply for an exemption. So they'll need a permit. And when it comes to the kitchen knives, that exemption is going to last exactly as long as it takes for someone to murder people with carving knives. And then that's going to require an exemption, a permit, a license as well. Because once you start banning things, you've got to ban all the things.
And if I may point out in culture, let me direct you to the Friday the 13th movies. I haven't seen them all. I'm not a huge fan of the slasher flicks. But again, slasher flicks. What does Jason Voorhees most often seen with? He is seen with a carving knife. Not a machete, not a Rambo knife, not a bayonet. Nope, it's just a regular old kitchen knife and all that. And then on top of that, also go on whatever Twitter group for various UK, probably Australian too. I don't know. I haven't seen as much. I see it mostly from the UK of the cops doing the junk on the bunk. Here's all the knives we've captured. 80% of them are going to be paring knives, which are, number one, exempted from this because they're small, and number two, are still kitchen knives.
Well, I mean, that reminds me of what happens in Britain every time they do one of these knife roundups. And no joke, you will find multiple flathead screwdrivers on that junk in the bunk photo. It's like, those aren't even knives. Those are tools. Oh, yes, they can be sharpened, but they aren't de facto knives.
Yep, and they can be used as a weapon. But I remember seeing a YouTube video by an English guy talking about how there was some sort of social experiment done with, and I can't even remember what it is, but talking about how these, essentially it was like a Boy Scout style camp, and they were getting increasingly violent competition to see the limits that they could do with it. And one of the things he was stating in kind of an alarmist fashion is and even giving the kids as prizes weapons like pocket knives. I'm like, how British of you and I said in the comments, how British of you for calling pocket knives weapons. And they said, well, they can be used. And someone chimed in, they can be used as a weapon. I'm like, so can a trophy. Give me the Stanley Cup and you hold still. I can beat you to death with it.
Okay, I need to correct myself because I said de facto and then I immediately thought that doesn't sound right, and I was incorrect. I was confusing it with de jure, Jure, which is based on law. De facto is in reality, although not intended to be such. So as an example here, if you are a household resident and your mail is delivered there and you pay the bills, you are de jure residents. But if you just stayed there last night because you're a guest, you're an Airbnb renter, you're only de facto residents. Look, no one cares except me, but I wanted to get it right, okay?
We are all allowed to nerd out whatever we want, Aaron. Nerding is what makes us powerful.
Well, yeah, but also I didn't want people going, no, Aaron, that's not what that means.
All right. Well, Aaron, you have here a video in the show notes, and you posted this after I started recording, so I haven't had a chance to watch it because it'll just mess up the recording.
So it really just adds some context as to why Australia is doing this. Actually, it's not all of Australia, as far as I can tell. It's just the state of Victoria. Victoria is the part of Australia where Melbourne is. It's in the lower right near the island of Tasmania. And so I wondered why all this hot and bothered over banning machetes. And, well, there has been a spate of killing done by criminals using knives which Australia classifies as machetes. And so, okay, it's Dunblane all over again. So, yeah, not really necessary for listening to the topic, but if you want to dig into a little bit more of the how and the why, there you go. And they're talking about how when England had its ban, they did it in 18 months, but Victoria is trying to do it in 6 months.
But either way, the takeaway for this, for Americans listening and for people in any other country where they allow you to have firearms, is note that they're going to keep going just because they said, I mentioned the federal assault weapons ban in the 90s that they got hunters to vote against the practical shooters because they were told that they weren't going to come for their hunting guns. And they, in fact, have come for hunting guns. In fact, Massachusetts' latest gun control bill, our post-NYSERPA temper tantrum, for lack of a better word, has now said that, yeah, you can't come into this state with a hunting license. There was originally an exemption for if it was a hunting license and it was a hunting gun, you could hunt in this state with as an outside residence. With firearms, and now it's one of those. Nope. You need you need a concealed carry permit, just to come in with a shotgun or a .22 rifle. And so, yep, no, they're going after the hunters too. So even you, quote unquote, sportsmen, are not exempt from this. And then after they've taken all the guns, they're going to start going for knives. And as Aaron pointed out, and sometimes the knives are screwdrivers.
Mm. Yeah, what I have seen is that when they start going after the hunting rifles, they won't call them hunting rifles. They will call them sniper rifles. Mm-hmm. Because that sounds scarier.
Or high-powered rifles, which...
high-powered sniper rifles.
Correct. Yeah. For those of you that balk at the calling of an AR-15 a high-powered rifle, like it's kind of a bare minimum intermediate caliber rifle, and but then suddenly turn it into but Uncle Booger's 30-06 Winchester Model 70. That is a high-powered rifle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in fact, I've got hanging on the wall in front of me a really nice framed collection of cartridges by the American Shooter Collection, in case I ever need to give another talk to young media influencers about firearms like I did, I don't know how many years ago, and they were from Britain. And I just taped some of my cartridges to the top of a shoebox lid. Mm-hmm. And it does a really good job of illustrating just how small the AR-15 round is compared to the big hunting rounds like 30-06 mm-hmm. or, 303 Winchester or whatever. It's a really nice piece.
And then you can see that 30-06 beside some of the African hunting cartridges like 375 H&H or 460 Weatherby Magnum. And suddenly you're like, oh.
Well, mine doesn't have all of that. It's just got the more used ones. The biggest one is 45-70, and then there's 12 gauge.
I mean, that is one of the big ones right there. Is the shotguns get left alone in this country quite a bit because of the fact that the vast majority of shotguns out there are sporting weapons and or home defense guns, and that's a tough one to kind of go after. And they I think a lot of the anti-gunners see it as a third rail. But boy, people talk about like the damage that a 5.56 round does to a human body. Yeah, these doctors clutching their pearls. Have you not ever seen someone shot with buckshot? So yeah, that's a big one. But yeah, no, I actually remember the guy who taught me how to shoot. He at one point went, you've heard of 30-06, right? I'm like, oh yeah, that's a pretty substantial deer cartridge. And he reached into his pocket and pulled out a spent 30-06 case. And then he said, you've heard me talk about my dad's 460 Weatherby Magnum. And I said, yeah, you called that the elephant gun. And he pulled out a 460 Weatherby Magnum case and then dropped the 30-06 case into it. It didn't go all the way in, but it got et. And then I went and shot it. And this is why I'm excited about owning a 454 Casull.
So I have dropped the link in the show notes. It's a really beautiful piece.
It is.
It's okay. I would call it pricey, but then again, I am miserly. It's something like $212 before shipping. But I mean, first of all, it's just aesthetically beautiful, and it's also educational. And so it's a really good way if you need to educate people as to the relative size of calibers. It's under glass, so they can't get to them, but they are deprimed. There's no powder in it, so it's perfectly safe. So the only people would have a fit with it would be like TSA agents.
Or the state of Massachusetts.
Oh, $232, not $212. Ugh, price has gone up.
Either way, it's for how nice it is, and I mean, you took me by their booth at one of the NRA shows, and I have seen and handled this firsthand, and it is gorgeous. So yeah, it is both educational, but you know what? Also, if you want something to hang up in your gun room to class up the place, this is definitely what you're looking for. Mm-hmm. So, Aaron,
yes, Weer'd.
This is a lovely collection of brass.
Ah, yes, I see what you're doing. So instead of David covering his ass, in this segment, he's recovering his brass.
Hi, and welcome to Gun Lovers and Other Strangers. For reloaders, one of the constant struggles is recovering fired brass. Obviously, this is easier with revolvers and manually operated rifles. However, semi-automatic firearms tend to fling their brass hither and yon. So in this segment, I'd like to talk about brass recovery. Regular listeners of the Assorted Calibers podcast and Handgun Radio have heard us talk about collecting our brass after shooting, as well as the habit of some firearms to send their brass into low Earth orbit, or Poland. If shooting at an indoor range, brass collection can be easier or nearly impossible. Easier in that fired brass will more likely be contained to the shooting bay and therefore readily collected. Any brass that winds up forward of the firing line is most likely considered lost, as the majority of ranges will not allow shooters to reach beyond that point for brass collection. There are even ranges that do not allow shooters to pick up any of their own fired brass. I tend to avoid places with these kinds of policies. Ranges often have sweeps for recovering dropped items and pushing fired cases forward of the line for later collection. In some circumstances, these sweeps may be used to recover brass as well. When shooting outdoors, either at a formal range or on less structured properties, the situation changes. Open space, gravel, grass, and loose dirt all add challenges to recovering fired cases. Even on my home range, I've resigned myself to only finding about 80% of my empty brass. The other 20% are a sacrifice to the brass spirits. It's amazing how quickly a case can disappear from plain sight. No matter how many times I pour over the same stretch of gravel or cropped grass, those last few empties will still elude me. Sometimes they'll turn up days or even weeks later, but usually they're gone for good. There are a few options to make brass recovery easier. One category is what are called brass catchers. And no, I'm not talking about low-cut shirts. These are various types of mesh bags that attach to the firearm over the ejection port. Most commonly seen on ARs these days, they're available in a number of sizes and capacities. Not necessarily optimal for every person or every type of shooting, but they do have their place. The company Wizzard has a line of products they call brass mowers in several sizes to collect different calibers of cases from the ground. These are in fact based on tools that were developed to collect nuts from orchards during harvest. They're basically round wire baskets on a broomstick. In use, they're rolled over the ground and brass is forced between the wires and retained inside. Once full, or full enough, the brass can be relatively easily dumped from the brass mower into a bucket. Caldwell offers a similar item in their product line. Unfortunately for me, they don't work very well on gravel. So until I get concrete poured in my shooting bay area, I'm limited to the old-fashioned method of picking up each case individually. If I'm shooting a firearm with a consistent ejection pattern, I can spread out a tarp in the desired area, and most of the empties should land on or near the tarp, making recovery easier and more complete. Of course, in my experience, every time I use this method, at least one case escapes both the tarp and all attempts at detection. The brass spirits will always claim their due. While recovering all of our empties is the goal, in reality it very rarely happens, especially in an outdoor shooting environment. At some point, we need to accept that while another hour of searching may produce a few more cases, it's not necessarily the best use of our time and cut our losses. Continuing the search is an example of the sunk cost fallacy, the belief that a past investment justifies further expenditures. However, in some situations, continuing to search for a rare or expensive fired case is justified. But we need to make sure we examine each situation rationally. Someday, scientists may invent a magnet that can be tuned to attract non-ferrous metals. Until then, we'll continue doing what we can to recover as many fired cases as possible. Have fun, and good luck finding that brass.
The next time you go to the range for a shooting session and you want to save money, a brass catcher is a solution.
That about wraps up this segment. If you have any questions for me or suggestions for future segments, or a comment on a past segment, please post them on the Assorted Calibers Podcast Facebook or MeWe pages, and Aaron or Weer'd will make sure I see them. I'm also a contributor on the Blue Collar Prepping blog, which can be found at bluecollarprepping.blogspot.com. Finally, I'm a published author, and books with my stories can be found on Amazon under the names Brena Bock and David Bock. That's all for now. Thanks for listening. I'm David, and this is Gun Lovers and Other Strangers.
So, for the purposes of this segment, Aaron, I looked it up, and Starline Brass sells unloaded 454 Casull cases at roughly about 40 cents a piece. So it does make hounding your brass very important.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's still not quite as impressive as that one time. It was like for the very first blog shoot I went to, first time I met Oddball, and someone brought out an AR-50, and I shot it, and I pocketed the brass just because I wanted a souvenir, and the guy asked for it back, and he says, that brass is like $1 a round, so if you want to keep it, you'll have to pay me.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, here, have it.
Yeah, depending on the quality ammo, 50 BMG can be like $5 a round. But also just holding a 50 BMG spent brass, it's one of those it's heavy. There's just a lot of raw material in there.
Mm-hmm.
And David makes the brass catcher joke in there, and I will say, it's funny, but it's also not something to be ignored. No matter what your gender is, be careful of your shirt cut. And that includes, things like polo shirts can just naturally kind of grab onto the brass, that little collar, and all that. And brass is dangerously hot when ejected, and it will tattoo you.
So when I took Mag 40, I don't remember which day it was, but it was fairly early on, Friday, I do believe. Now, I was wearing a very sensible t-shirt, but I was shooting isosceles, and I did have a hot round go down my shirt. What I did was I just leaned forward, and I got fortunate, and it just rolled down the inside of my shirt. Mm-hmm. So I was able to finish the round, because I believe we were being timed. And so I was fortunate that it didn't lodge somewhere uncomfortable. But it can happen even if you're sensibly dressed, is what I'm saying.
Oh, I had a buddy of mine was shooting a Beretta 21A, and those guns are notorious for very, very erratic ejection pattern. I mean, it'll send them to the left, it'll send them to the right, it'll send them backwards, it'll send them forward. Like, you have no idea where that spent casing is going. And he was shooting that thing, and one of them flipped up over and landed and slid in between my t-shirt and my neck. And
yeah.
I was behind him. I was not on the shooting line, so I didn't have a gun in my hand. So I had the freedom to do whatever I wanted with both my hands and do the hot brass dance. And even then, I had a perfect 22 long rifle spent case tattoo on the back of my neck for several years. Like, you could see the rim. It was quite impressive. You could see the mouth and you could see the rim and just the straight line of the case. And it was just seared onto my skin for a long, long time. It did eventually go away, which I'm kind of bummed about. I kind of miss it. But yeah, that was so yeah. Be very, very careful, because hot brass ejects. And if you're teaching new shooters, by all means, let them know that that's something that may happen, and tell them. I always tell them, no matter what happens, just set the gun down on the shooting bench, and you can step away. And so you get the hot brass. Gun goes down on the shooting bench, step away, and then dance like no one's watching.
And you're probably going to be cursing.
Yes. As you hear that lovely bacon sizzle. So speaking of range time, as you may remember, Miles gave us his initial impression of his Henry lever action Supreme. Now that he's had a bit more trigger time, let's hear if he still loves it.
Hello, this is Miles with another episode of the Southpaw Corner. In this episode, I am going to be talking more about the Henry Supreme rifle after I mounted the Swamp Fox Optics 1-4 power LVPO. When I first mounted it, it was shooting about 6 inches left compared to what it did when it was on the AR, but got it zeroed in pretty quick with my PMC, some PMC bronze 55 grain ammunition. And once I got it zeroed in at 50 yards, I did a nice group at that, and off the sandbag rest that David got me for Christmas, I was able to get a approximately 3/4 of an inch group. After that, I did try a couple other different ammunitions for the test out how it did with different ones. One was a USA brand M193 55 grain 5.56 ammunition, which shot slightly low into the right, which I did notice on all the 5.56 ammunition compared to the 223. It did all shoot low into the right, but it shot at about 1.25 inches for a group. And then I also tried a Federal Ordnance 5.56, again, slightly low into the right, comparatively speaking. But it was all 3 holes in a slight line, diagonal line, touching. So it was probably only about 1/2 inch center to center. Very accurate, very nice. I also did try some Federal American Eagle 62 grain 223 ammunition. Was right on target, about the same size group as the PMC bronze, but worked very well. After getting a good zero, I then tried taking it out to 100 and 200 yards, shooting at steel. At the 100 yards, no problem hitting at all. They were all very accurate. I'm assuming that the 5.56 was slightly low and to the right still. It did seem to be hitting the bottom of the disc. I think it was an 8-inch circle. It was slightly low and to the right still. And then I took it out to 198 yards, which is the maximum I can shoot at the range I was at. And that it shot very accurately still with the PMC and the American Eagle. But at that point is when I had a hard time hitting with the 5.56 ammunitions, unless I started adjusting my point of aim because of that low and to the right. Not sure why both brands of 5.56 were low and to the right. And if I had more of those, I might readjust the aim because if I could get more of the Federal Ordnance stuff, I would have probably changed my adjusted my scope so that was the more accurate ammunition. But where I have few hundred rounds of PMC bronze, and I had 2 boxes of that. it didn't seem worth it, and trying to track down more of it was not really in the cards at this time. PMC bronze is by far cheaper and not that much of a difference in group size, quarter inch at 50 yards, half inch at 100 yards, would say. Just not worth the changing of ammunitions. I have yet to be able to get someone else to try the rifle and see how they like it. Even though this last time I went, there were 4 other gentlemen. They were very interested in it, but they were busy and didn't want to shoot mine. They wanted to shoot theirs. So there's that. I didn't know them, and that's fine. I was hoping to get somebody else's opinion. And hopefully soon I'll get to the range with Weer'd and he can give it a try. Outside of that, it's been flawless, not a single jam. Granted, it is a manual action, so jamming is not common, but nothing like, failure to eject or anything like that. It's been very dependable, very accurate, and, yes, I've only got about just under 200 rounds through it at this point. No issues. I am going to keep shooting it. I am going to keep seeing what it's capable of doing. And I will say, so far, the only thing I can say is a little bit of a mag well, to help guide it into place would be nice. But, it would take away from the appearance of the overall look of the gun. It would kind of give it a non-traditional look. It would look a little funny. But with all the, granted I've only used so far the Magpul mags and that one Hex brand mag, which does give me at least a feel for what a longer mag would be, and no issues with any of them, no interference with the lever, no problems whatsoever feeding, and they all seem to insert and eject just fine. As I run into other people with different magazines for it, I might try them and see what happens. But right now, that's all I have are the the P-mags and the one Hex mag. Outside of that, it has been working very well. Coming up in the next couple of episodes, I do have a couple other things I'm going to be talking about. I have recently started shooting the Ruger 5.7, and I've also added a sight to it, which I'll be reporting on that. I also picked up a Beretta Bobcat, the little 21A 22 long rifle flip-up barrel Beretta. And I've had some experience with that, some good things, some bad things, and I'll be reporting on that as well. And I think that's it for right now. I will be giving more reports on this as I get more shots through it and get more people to try it. And with time, I will be able to give you a more in-depth. I'm hoping to bring this out to 1,000 rounds before the end of the year, so we know really how it works. With that, I'm going to say good day, and hopefully everyone has a great shooting time next time they go to the range. Have a great day.
Yeah, Miles and I were talking about hitting the range this weekend, but things got busy for both him and I. But I do want to try this gun out a lot. It does. I'm not a huge fan of lever guns, but something tells me that this one might hit a little different than the than the standard ones that are kicking around. And given that Miles was a saw gunner when he was in the Army, I don't think he'd mind trying my new Ruger.
Your new Ruger what?
The 454.
Oh, okay.
Ba-boom!
I had either forgotten or missed that it was a Ruger.
Yeah, yep. Ruger Super Red Hawk Alaskan.
I remembered everything except Ruger. Okay.
Yep.
To be honest, a lot of times when you start getting off into the weeds, my mind just drifts and I just hear a tone and I think of beige.
I was showing it to my wife, and she was so unimpressed, and I was trying to convince her how wrong she was for not being impressed. No, it's very impressive. It shoots very, very big bullets, and they go very fast.
How did you trick her into marrying you?
I'm charming.
You're charming, and she has brain damage. I swear, if I ever meet her, I'm going to buy her at least one drink, possibly more, and we are going to gossip about you like ex-girlfriends. Does he do that thing with you? Yeah, why? He thinks it's funny, apparently.
I'm scrolling up in the memes. I think, David posted a meme earlier today imagine a wild raccoon got into your house and it did all the things you'd expect a raccoon to do. But it also made you a pretty good cheesecake and even did the dishes after. Are you picturing it? Because this is a very close approximation of what it's like living with me. I also do laundry. And I have a very nice vacuum. It's a Dyson.
Okay.
So you know who doesn't have brain damage, Aaron?
See, I know you want me to queue up our listeners, but considering that they keep coming back, I'm not sure.
Well, no matter what your brain condition is, we want to thank you, each and every one. We really appreciate you listening to this show. Aaron doesn't know why. I know why. Trust me. I know. And we also have to give a very special thanks to all our supporters on Patreon. And if you would like to join in to become a Patreon patron, go to patreon.com/AssortedCalibersPodcast to sign up. Patrons get an early release of the podcast. Plus, we have bonus content. That's the whole point. Bonus content. We have the blooper reels. We have the ACB film track and the ACB mag dump.
Also, please remember to rate us on Apple Podcasts and Pocket Casts. Subscribe to us on the platform of your choice, and share the show with your friends, both online and off.
I have a blog. It's called WeerdWorld.com. That's WeerdWorld.com. And hear me weekly on Handgun Radio on the Firearms Radio Network.
And you can get more from me, assuming I can get out of this creative slump, at Linktree/Aaron Paulette. That's linktree.ee/Aaron Paulette, all one word.
And thanks to Nate Spencer for our music.
He's a raccoon that makes cheesecake. I am a hedgehog with a Mosin Nagant. Our animal avatars are assorted, and so's our podcast. Good night, everyone.
Good night.